Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our presentation on specially designed instruction brought to you by the Office of Special Education Instruction. For today's presentation, we will provide you with an overview and definition of what specially designed instruction is, take a look at the approach to specially designed instruction as it relates to content, methodology, and delivery of instruction, identify features of explicit and systematic instruction, and differentiate between specially designed instruction and accommodations. When we think of special education, we should automatically envision specially designed instruction. Our students are wonderfully and uniquely equipped with their own set of strengths and needs, which requires an approach just as uniquely designed as they are. So what is specially designed instruction? IDEA defines specially designed instruction as adapting as appropriate to the needs of an eligible student the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction. Specially designed instruction is legally required and is in place to address the unique needs of the student that result from the student's disability, as well as to ensure access of the student to the general education curriculum so that the student can meet the educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all children. There are many critical elements to specially designed instruction. Specially designed instruction is what the teacher does. It is teacher-driven with the purpose to meet individual needs of students based upon IEP documented needs. It is customized, planned in advance, and involves teaching, coaching, and directing the students along their instructional path. Let's consider this graphic and the starting point for all instruction. We are provided content that is driven by curriculum determined by the state. Based on the curriculum, there are a variety of factors to consider at the school level. When we think about content, what do we want our students to know? How do our students access the general education curriculum? How will we teach it? Is there a practice or set of approaches that prove to be more productive or ideal for a student when acquiring knowledge or skills? What considerations will we have when designing lesson plans, and how will we deliver the instruction? In framing our practices around specially designed instruction, these are our guides. Under content, we have the state standards, which also relate to the stated purpose and learning goals, as well as to acquire knowledge and skills that comprise the curriculum to be mastered. Under methodology, we know that we have the instructional design of content. We're following a process or a model by which instruction occurs, whether it be lecture, discussion, small group, simulation, or experience, as well as considering the process created to teach or deliver academic instruction. Within delivery, how instruction is provided is based on students' individualized needs. Through a repertoire of instructional strategies a teacher implements to communicate and interact with students, as well as teaching that results in access to, participation in, and progress in the general education curriculum. The following are examples of specially designed instruction as it relates to content, methodology, and delivery. Under content, we have our core state standards in math, English language arts, science, and social studies. There are a variety of electives as well that students may access, which could require specially designed instruction, such as reading classes, personal development, strategies for success, world languages, specials, or finer performing arts. Under methodology, there are a variety of ways to approach, including the workshop model, I do, we do, you do, chunking information, think alouds and modeling, which provide for routines, or a multi-sensory approach. Under delivery, there may be pre-teaching of vocabulary using explicit systematic instruction, explicit step-by-step instruction provided for comprehensive skills and tasks, or teaching the writing process with scaffolds with an emphasis on planning and organization. This is an example of specially designed instruction given a kindergarten standard on phonics. The content tells us that the student will orally identify, segment, and blend various phonemes to develop phonological and phonemic awareness. Teachers may use a multisensory phonics instructional approach, which also provides for that systematic design of instruction. Through delivery, there may be the use of sand trays for tactile sensory input, visual gestures that are paired with auditory strategies, the use of multiple modalities, or picture reinforcement. Next, we have an example of specially designed instruction given a Math 8 standard, in which it indicates that the student will evaluate an algebraic expression for given replacement values of the variables and simplify algebraic expressions in one variable. Visual representations using manipulatives could be an approach, guided practice, or other sports as needed for the student's unique needs. Under delivery, the explicit step-by-step instructional approach may be implemented, as well as modeling and feedback for the student in real time. Here's an example of specially designed instruction given a standard for earth science that indicates the student will investigate and understand that Earth is unique in our solar system. Key ideas for this include that the Earth supports life because of its relative proximity to the sun and other factors, and that the dynamics of the sun-Earth-Moon system cause seasons, tides, and eclipses. Methodology approaches may include visual supports that have charts, graphic organizers, or potentially 3D representation. Guided practice could be implemented, thinking routines established, or station teaching developed. Under delivery, we would have explicit step-by-step instruction with modeling and scaffolds provided, assessment of progress, and feedback to the student in real time. This video shows an example of a high-leverage practice that focuses on systematically designed instruction towards a specific learning goal when providing specially designed instruction.
Multiple opportunities to practice and receive feedback using the support. In this final clip showing an intensive mathematics lesson, Mrs. Sadai Khan scaffolds her students' success for solving word problems by explicitly modeling use of a strategy and using manipulatives.
If we are going to do some word problems today, I'm going to do one all by myself, and then we're going to do some together, and then you are going to do some all by yourself. Okay, here I have a tool that I like to use to help me remember the steps to solving a word problem. So here, the first step I do is read the problem and think, what is the problem about? Then for step 2, I reread the problem and try to figure out what are they asking me. I have to do step 3 and think, what operation should I use? Do I need to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? And then step 4, check my answer and think, does my answer make sense? Is my math correct? So I like to keep this tool in front of me when I'm solving word problems to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly and I'm getting the right answer. So I'm going to start by doing one all by myself, and I want you to see how I would do it. There are 9 students playing on the grass. 6 more join them. How many are playing on the grass in all? I would say to myself, what is this problem about? It's about students playing in the grass. What is the problem asking me? It wants to know how many kids are playing all together. So from that, I can tell that this problem wants me to do some addition. How many are playing in the grass in all? So I'm going to get some blocks because it helps if I can see what I'm working with. And I know that there are 9 students playing in the grass, so I'll count out 9. And I can go ahead and write on the table 9. And then it says 6 more join. So I'm going to go back to my bag of manipulatives and add 6 more blocks. I'll go ahead and write a big 6 on the table. So I remember when I went through my steps, I had to figure out what the problem was asking me to do. And I remember it was to add. So between my numbers, I'm going to write that plus sign because that means I need to add. So now I need to add 9 plus 6 to figure out how many I will have altogether. Thanks for reminding me. I went ahead and wrote that inside there. So I'm going to add, or I'm going to combine all of my blocks now to see how many kids are playing in the grass altogether. When I added the 9 plus 6, I got 15. How many are playing in the grass in all? 15 students are playing all together in the grass. So that's how I solved my problem. I used my tool to remind me of the steps that I needed to take. I wrote on the table so I could see my equation, but I've also used manipulatives to help me combine all of those numbers together to get the final answer. You think we can try one together?
In the previous clip, Mrs. Khan provided the modeling and solved the problem. Afterwards, she continued with a high level of scaffolding to support Molly's attempts to use the strategy and become independent. In summary, systematic instruction begins at the planning phase, when teachers carefully consider students' performance in light of curricular demands. Then, systematic instruction continues throughout the instructional process to match the intensity of instruction with students' individualized needs. The principles of systematic instruction intersect with several other HLPs, including number 16, use explicit instruction, and HLP number 20, intensify instruction. More information about systematically designing instruction towards learning goals and its role in supporting the needs of students with and without disabilities can be found at www.highleveragepractices.org and the National Center for Intensive Instruction website. Thanks for watching, and please continue using resources from this series on high leverage practices for special education. Multiple opportunities.
So let's take a look at some of the noticing and highlights from that specially designed instruction lesson. The teacher provided direct and explicit instruction, provided a tool or visual support to the student, modeled the learning and problem solving using the I do, we do, you do methodology, used manipulatives, returned to and reinforced the steps of the task, provided feedback, and helped the student work towards independence. The student was provided a roadmap, received modeling and opportunities for practice, received support with visual and tactile tools, received specific feedback and positive reinforcement, and was able to complete the task independently. We have spent some time defining what specially designed instruction is and have broken it down by content, methodology, and delivery. Let's now explore how specially designed instruction is developed. First and foremost, it is based on students' identified strengths and needs as indicated via assessments, which could be formal or informal and also classroom-based. Next, specific evidence-based instructional approaches should be selected and utilized. Evidence-based practices are content-specific, developmentally appropriate, learner-dependent, and taught using high-leverage practices. Some examples may include repeated readings, reading mastery, explicit vocabulary instruction, or other supports as indicated. And finally, the implementation of high-leverage practices across both general education and special education instruction. High-leverage practices are organized around 4 aspects of practice, which are collaboration, assessment, social-emotional behavior, and instruction. We're going to further explore those features of explicit and systematic instruction.
SDI uses explicit and systematic instruction. Not only is there a specific process that teachers will go through, but instruction is direct and clear, while also engaging at a perky pace to keep students involved and wanting to know more. And ultimately, it's success-driven. We want to make sure that we are providing instruction that leads to student positive outcomes. Features of explicit and systematic instruction. The first piece is strategically selecting and sequencing examples of new skills that we would like for students to acquire. This ensures that the students have mastered the prerequisite skills we need them to have in order to move on, so they have a strong foundation. And it reduces processing complexity and focuses in on the relevant information that students must know. Then we move into the I do piece of instruction, where we provide clear teacher explanations and models. This is where we're providing that direct instruction of the new content. This reduces working memory and processing demands for students and focuses in on that specific learning objective. I'll give you two examples below. The first is complex and really requires a student to process out the pertinent information. And then explanation 2 is really clear and concise, so it's easy for students to focus in on what they need to retain. Explanation 1. The letter C can make 2 different sounds. Sometimes it will say k. This happens when it's followed by A, O, U, or any consonant except H. In other cases, C makes the S sound when it comes before E, I, or Y. As I mentioned previously, it's a lot of language for students to sift through and for them to zero in on what information they need to extrapolate from that. Explanation 2 is really clear. C says k in front of A, O, U. It says S in front of E, I, and Y. Clear, concise, and to the point. Once we complete that I do instruction, that modeling, then we shift and transition into that we do. And it's an opportunity to carefully guide practice for students. We want to make sure that we keep students actively engaged through repetition and distributed practice. Again, this perky pace comes in really handy here, and it helps students focus their attention on the instructional goals and facilitates mastery, having that multiple opportunities for practice. Once we've moved through that, we'll transition into the last feature of explicit and systematic instruction, which is where we monitor student responses and provide immediate feedback. Providing that quick feedback helps students to encode the relevant and accurate information. We want students to be practicing something correctly. And then it facilitates that long-term storage of information for later use. So we will transition into an activity where we'll kind of model some of these. And this is a vocabulary example lesson that deals with, like I mentioned, that explicit and systematic instruction. And we'll focus in on Anita Archer's technique. This is something that you can reference at a later point, but it'll be embedded within the activity. For your knowledge, I'm using a vocabulary term hopefully you're not familiar with, or maybe not as familiar with. It would be different for students, but this is just a fun way to see how we might design instruction to teach vocabulary. So we'll start off by, ensuring students have other foundational skills to understand these vocabulary terms, but we'll start off with kind of introducing the term. Quotidian, that is our vocabulary term for today. So we'll look at the ASL signs for quotidian. I have them linked here, but I'll go ahead and show you. The sign is this, meaning every day. And we'll listen to the pronunciation.
Quotidian.
Quotidian. Quotidian is an adjective, and the definition means it occurs every day, daily. A quotidian experience would be one that happens regularly and typically. A synonym is daily. So we've introduced that word, and we've provided that direct instruction really quickly on that vocabulary term. Now we'll go into some of those guided practice opportunities. Why might we call this image quotidian? Coffee cup to the right. We might start by saying, This image is quotidian because, and offer opportunities for students to engage. And hopefully someone says, someone drinks coffee every day, or it's something I drink before I go to work. Hopefully you all are thinking at that at home. We'll transition into another one. And again, I'm going to model that. Why might someone say, I am running late again. I am stuck in quotidian traffic. We'll start and model. They might say the traffic is quotidian because, and I'm going to model that language. The traffic is quotidian because we sit in traffic every day on the way to work. And hopefully everyone comes up with additional examples. We'll keep moving quickly. Quotidian can be an adjective. It can be an adverb, or we say quotidianly. And then it can be a noun, quotidianness. I'll give you an example. My Thursday morning was quotidian, the typical special education collaborative learning team meetings. Kimberly and Kate quotidianly talked about specially designed instruction again. In fact, they modeled explicit teaching when we all know it's quotidianness within the classroom. And then we'd give an opportunity for students to give their examples and monitor with that quick active feedback. In transitioning, thinking about specially designed instruction, we often implement some of these guiding questions to determine where we're going with specially designed instruction. So in planning, is it something special? Is it something different from what all the other students are doing? Is it unique? Does it address the students' unique needs? Is it connected or related to an IEP goal where we're collecting data and monitoring student progress? Is it truly instruction rather than a tool or an accommodation? Is it intentional, and is it designed to bring about progress? Is it explicit and systematic? Is it growing or developing a skill that hopefully will be transferable or generalizable into other settings? And is it building independence? Our ultimate goal is for our students to be independent thinkers. And so is it ultimately building that skill for our students? When we take a deeper look, we like to differentiate between specially designed instruction and accommodations because oftentimes they do go hand in hand, but there are distinct differences. One easy way to differentiate between the two is that specially designed instruction is something that an educator does. It's an instructional strategy that must be taught to students. And that is adapting content, methodology, or delivery of instruction, which we have talked about earlier in this presentation. Whereas accommodations are typically a thing or a tool that allows students to complete tasks independently. It's a change in their materials or a procedure that enables students to participate in the curriculum and assessments to allow their abilities and learned knowledge to be expressed and assessed. So we'll look at a few different examples. Again, that specially designed instruction is on the left and the accommodations on the right. So a few examples. Specially designed instruction would be teaching students word recognition or fluency strategies by providing an oral presentation of grade level text for assignments and assessments. Another one would be instruction in how to use, potentially for a student with a vision impairment, low vision aids or technology for them to enlarge materials in order to visually access text and images. One more might be teaching students how to use a graphic organizer in order to generate a topic sentence, 3 details, and a concluding sentence. That would be used within an English or language arts lesson to really break down how to implement that graphic organizer to support their thinking. Accommodations, however, thinking about that tool or that change in procedure or material. So one example might be read aloud. Another example might be use of an iPad in order to enlarge images in order for visual access. The graphic organizer would be the accommodation, alternate means of response, an American Sign Language interpreter, a dictionary, flexible schedule, extended time. As mentioned previously, an accommodation on its own is not specially designed instruction. However, teaching the student how to use and implement that accommodation is one form of SDI. To wrap us up here, there's lots of available resources for parents and families and caregivers, so we'll kind of delve into those for a few minutes. The first would be through the FCPS website. There is a page called the Special Education Process, which includes a vast amount of resources for families, but also links out to other websites to connect you with the Office of Special Education Procedural Support, the Office of Special Education Instruction, and even the Parent Resource Center. So I'll go ahead and take you there so we can navigate that site. Special education process. It includes a little bit about the special education process, including that handbook for parents, which is available in other languages as well. It walks individuals through the important or key elements of the special education process, and even looking at the 14 different disability categories outlined by the Virginia Department of Education. Delves into a few additional elements of the special education process, and wherever you notice the dark blue underline is a link out to an additional site. Linked here is the Special Education Handbook for Parents, as I mentioned previously, with, again, it translated into different languages. And then at the very bottom, we have some timeline information for special education referrals and eligibilities, any forms that are related to the special education process. As I mentioned previously, that Parent Resource Center. And then at the bottom, Section 504 information that falls under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, special education procedural support, and then again, as I mentioned previously, that special education instruction. So this is a great landing page for all things special education in the county. And then you will have access, hopefully, to these slides after our presentation. So we've also linked here the procedural safeguards for families. It includes parents' rights, parent and guardian rights, and then the special education parent handbook, which really delves into in further detail all about the special education process. Thanks so much.